Hi, I'm Rocco Staino, and welcome to the StoryMakers Holiday Special. Today, I have some special guests with me, and we're going to be sharing our favorite new holiday books. I have John Sellers. John is the Children's Reviews Editor for Publishers Weekly, and Maria Russo, the children's book editor for the New York Times, and John Schumacher, John AKA Mr. Schu. John is the ambassador for school libraries for Scholastic book fairs. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, now that the holiday season is upon us, what do you enjoy most about holidays?
Well, for me, I love going back, seeing my family, of course. Food is a big part of our family. We're Italian-American family, and for us, actually, Christmas Eve is kind of the bigger deal.
You're Italian-American, John.
I know,
Where does
right?
Sellers come from?
Why am I only coming here now? I know, yeah. No, on my mom's side. But for our family, Christmas Eve is actually a bigger deal than Christmas Day. That's sort of when all, breaking out all the food, all the fish dishes, opening gifts, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we do a big Christmas Eve dinner too, being Italian.
Same here. So I will pick something else as my favorite, because we also do a great Christmas Eve fish dinner. I love decorating a Christmas tree. I think it's just this fantastic home art project that everyone can get involved in, and I'm very particular, and you have a lot of older ornaments and newer ones, and you can kind of go through the box every year and get reminded, and that's always my favorite moment, is decorating the tree.
And mine is the same. Every year I have a trim-a-tree party where friends come over, we order pizza, we have drinks, and the thing I love the most about unpacking the ornaments is each ornament has a story. And so we spend a lot of time talking about, well, who gave you this ornament, and why does this one deserve to be in this spot on the Christmas tree? And on my Christmas tree, I have a lot of whimsical and kitschy ornaments. So I have French toast and ketchup bottles. So it's just a lot of fun.
The holidays is a time for family and friends, we all agree, and I think there are a few books that kind of show that. And John, why don't you start with your pick?
Yeah, so the first title I have is one called Over the River and Through the Wood. It's by Linda Ashman and illustrated by Kim Smith and published by Sterling. And it's basically a modern update of that sort of holiday song that we all know, which is technically a Thanksgiving song. But what I love about this book is that it really is applicable to any sort of wintertime holiday. No holiday is mentioned concretely or specifically. You could use it for Thanksgiving, for Christmas, for Hanukkah, for anything. And so that's one thing that I really love about it. And the other thing that I love is just the real diversity of families that are sort of represented in the book. And you kind of get that sense even from the opening pages. There's this whole family photos on the wall kind of thing. And it just shows you've got families of mixed race, families with adopted kids, families with same-sex parents. And basically, as the book unfolds, the author is sort of redoing the song and focusing on all the transportation woes that have kind of become part of modern day, the holidays, how awful airplane travel is. And at one point, they're even in a hot air balloon. It gets really bad. So, yeah. So I think it's a really wonderful book, and it's just so broadly applicable that it was one of my favorites for the year so far.
I have the song going through my head now.
I know.
So thank you.
Well, we've sung on KidLit TV before, but not today, I don't think. Maybe at the end.
I appreciate that. Yes. That's probably not going to happen.
Maria?
Well, I have a book, a beautiful book that's also a family story, but a really different kind of family story that I've never seen before. It's called Marguerite's Christmas. It's by India Desjardins and illustrated by Pascal Blanchet, published by Enchanted Lion Books, based right here in Brooklyn. And it's originally published in the French, it's translated, and what's different about this book is it focuses on the oldest member of the family, a grandmother named Marguerite, who is really getting toward the end of her life, and we learn that she loved Christmas, and things have kind of slowed down now, and she's at the point where she doesn't even really want to be with her children and grandchildren because it's a little too tiring, and she's happy that they're happy. And she hopes that they understand that. So it's a very quiet Christmas story. We follow her through the day in this really beautiful, retro, kind of vintage, mid-century modern looking art with beautiful snow-covered houses and cars in a sort of city street. But what happens is nothing, really. As the day goes on, she's going to be alone. She's going to watch her Christmas specials that she really looks forward to. And as she's kind of having her quiet Christmas, a family outside her door, their car breaks down, and she realizes outside the window that they're celebrating Christmas inside the car. They're singing and unwrapping their presents. They come and knock on the door and ask if they can use the telephone, and she says yes, and then they come back and say, "Oh, could we use the bathroom?" And she says yes. And then she suddenly realizes, I'm not so scared, because at first she's scared of them. She goes out and brings them a drink. And just as she's bringing it outside in this really beautiful spread, their car is driving away. But that's okay. I mean, it's definitely a different kind of Christmas book. It's, attuned a little bit more to the sense of loss and sadness that a lot of people feel in Christmas. And I think the right kind of kid will really appreciate this.
A great book to share with families who have elderly members,
Exactly.
around the holidays.
I think this is a book I was surprised and happy to come across.
Well, it sounds like it could make a great holiday television special.
It would.
Yes.
And it has to be
When I was growing
exactly
up,
right.
when I was growing up, I always liked that Hallmark Hall of Fame specials. And when I saw this book, The Invisible Thread, A Christmas Story, I said, oh, this will make a great television special. Also, it's based on a true story, and it was an adult book by Laura Schroff and Alexander Drazanowski, and illustrated by Barry Root. And it's about a professional businesswoman in New York City who befriends a boy who's never really celebrated Christmas, and she takes him to her family, and they go off to the suburbs where her sister and her family lives, and he experiences his first Christmas celebration. It's one of those kind of tear-jerky type of books, which you always love around the holidays.
I think they need to be in the mix.
Yes, most definitely. Yes, John, what do you have?
Well, I have Clifford Celebrates Hanukkah. Clifford is probably one of the most iconic characters. For 13 years, I worked in an elementary school just outside of Chicago, and one of the things I loved the most when kindergarten would come for the first time is that's actually when I would introduce Clifford. And so we would read various Clifford books, we would spend time on Clifford's website, but it took 149 books, 150 Clifford books before Clifford finally celebrated Hanukkah. And he is celebrating Hanukkah this year. So in the book, Clifford Celebrates Hanukkah, Emily Elizabeth, Clifford's best friend, go to her friend Michelle's house. And Michelle is Jewish and she is celebrating Hanukkah. And her family takes Clifford and Emily Elizabeth through all of the traditions that they do, such as lighting the menorah and eating latkes. And toward the end of the book, as we know in all Clifford books, there must be some type of conflict. Well, the big menorah, one of the lights on the big menorah goes out. So who is going to help save the day? Who is tall enough to save the day? Of course, Clifford. So he goes up to the top and he's able to illuminate the menorah again. So I think it's a very accessible way. It's a nice way to introduce Hanukkah to children and to celebrate it with Clifford.
Speaking of Hanukkah, I have a book that incorporates both Hanukkah and an iconic Christmas figure, Santa Claus. It's Dear Santa, Love, Rachel Rosenstein. All she wanted for Hanukkah was Christmas. And it's written by Amanda Peet and Andrea Troyer, illustrated by Christine Devinier. And it is by Doubleday, an imprint of Random House. As I've been told by many Jewish friends who weren't able to celebrate Christmas, they always wanted to. And Rachel is no exception. She actually writes a letter to Santa asking him to come to her house. And despite leaving latkes with chocolate chips for Santa, her family tries to tell her that Santa probably will not stop at their house. And that's what happens. He doesn't stop there, and she's not very happy, as we can see. But as it is a tradition in many Jewish families, especially in New York City area, they do go out for Chinese food. At the Chinese restaurant, they not only meet her classmate, who's Chinese, who does not celebrate Christmas, but there's also a Muslim and some other people who don't celebrate Christmas. And she actually realizes that she is not the only one that doesn't have that holiday, but she has her own holiday. Yes, but do you have? You must have a Santa book,
I
right?
do have a Santa book, and I know in last year's episode you highlighted John Agee's Little Santa, and I have another sort of Santa origin story for you guys, and it is called When Santa Was a Baby. It's by Linda Bailey, and it's illustrated by Geneviève Godbout. It's from Tundra Books, which is a Canadian publisher. And basically it's about a family, and they give birth to a little baby boy who just is not like other children in a lot of ways, and they can't quite make heads or tails of what this baby's like. He doesn't kind of coo, he sort of booms with a big ho 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 from a young age. He loves the cold. When they give him presents, he gives them all away. And he just grows up that way, and he desperately wants. He draws the pet that he wants, and they think it's a unicorn, but secret. Spoiler alert: it's a reindeer.
I love his rosy cheeks.
Yeah, he's got red rosy cheeks. The belly starts showing up. And eventually he comes into his own. He kind of embraces his destiny. And what I love about this book, there's a few things. I mean, there's these wonderful sort of pastel and pencil illustrations that really feel like just like soaked in nostalgia, and it sort of kind of evokes these sort of childhood memories. And the other thing that I feel like is such a great part about it is that this is Santa, realizing even as a child that these are the qualities that make him who he is. And I feel that's such a great message that the things that define you as a child or things that you love can really bloom into passions that even if you're not Santa can still be an amazing part of your adult life.
Does it explain how he met Mrs. Claus?
No,
does it get into that?
That's the sequel.
Yeah.
The sequel.
Next year.
It's not a complete biography, unfortunately, but it's still
more.
a lovely book.
That's
so.
right. Yes. Maria, what do you have?
Well, it's not exactly a Santa book, and it's another kind of off the beaten path Christmas book. It's called Too Many Toys with an exclamation point, not to be confused with David Shannon's Too Many Toys, no exclamation point from a few years ago. This is a different book.
Differentiate the two.
This is by Heidi Deedman, a debut author illustrator, her first book from Candlewick. And this is the story of little Lulu, who has a special toy named Jupiter her whole life. And it's always her favorite toy, but as tends to happen year by year, her toy collection grows and grows and grows until it's actually a problem, especially after Christmas. So midway through the book, we see a Christmas and we see her house just overflowing with her toys. And so Lulu just had too many toys. So she decides to have a great big enormous toy giveaway. Aww. And all her friends come and she gives away all her toys. And I think the toy giveaway scene is kind of a party. It's kind of fun. So I think this book actually will be enjoyed by children, especially because the very last page says still there might be a tiny bit of space for just a few more toys next Christmas. And Jupiter, her old teddy bear, saying, uh-oh. So the art is really kind of offbeat and interesting. And this book reminds me of it has a kind of classic feel. It reminds me of the man who did not wash his dishes. In a way, it's kind of a cautionary, fable-like tale for kids about finding your limits. And I think we all need this around Christmas time. Mm-hmm. And so it's not too much of a downer that you can have. She has some toys, but maybe not too many.
Well, speaking of toys, I have Toys Meet Snow by Emily Jenkins and Paul O. Zielinski, published by Schwartz and Wade. And I am always attracted to Schwartz and Wade's books because I know when I pick up a Schwartz and Wade book, it's going to have good paper stock. It's going to have phenomenal illustrations. But the first thing I noticed when I received this book in the mail was the glitter cover. So feel the glitter because it feels nice. And of course, kids are attracted to that. Many people are familiar with these characters already because they starred in a chapter book series. The first book is Toys Go Out, Toy Dance Party, and then Toys Come Home. And after Toys Come Home, they thought the series was over. And I know Paul Zielinski was really sad about that because he loves drawing these characters. So they decided to tell the character story in a picture book format. And this book, in my opinion, has the best subtitle of the year. It has the longest subtitle of the year, but I think it provides a nice summary. So I'm going to read you the subtitle that you could never share on Twitter because you'd use all your characters. So this book is called Toys meet snow, being the wintertime adventures of a curious stuffed buffalo, a sensitive plush stingray, and a book-loving rubber ball. And right there you see we have these three characters, and the three characters in this book are so different from each other, and that's what I really appreciate, because I know that a child is going to see themselves in one of those characters. So we have Lumpy, who is a stuffed buffalo, and look how cute Lumpy is. We have Stingray, who's a plush stingray, and we have Plastic, who is a rubber ball, and she can't help that her name does not match her body, which I think is so wonderful. Now, I do have a favorite spread from this book, and I think it pairs very nicely with Kevin Henkes's Waiting, where you see that the ball and the stingray and the stuffed buffalo are looking out the window, and they're wondering, well, what is going on out there? And I want to go out, and I want to explore, and I want to discover snow. So that's what they decide to do. After working really hard to get the door open, eventually the three characters go outside, and they have conversations in which one character looks at things from a very scientific perspective, one character looks at things from a very emotional perspective, and the other character just kind of goes in between the two. So I think this book is gorgeous. I think that it makes a phenomenal read aloud. And when I read this book, I posted online that I think every picture book creator should look at this book to study how to break apart text, because Paulo Zielinski did an amazing job of taking Emily's manuscript and positioning each word in the perfect location. This book is cozy, it's comfortable. It's one of those books that you want to hug and you want to share with everyone.
Funny, too.
I know,
And it's funny.
The Ziploc bag.
Yeah,
That's my favorite.
Well, she's dry clean only.
Yeah. You got to suit up one way or the other to go outside.
So it's a book that makes you laugh, a book that makes you think, a book that makes you ponder, and a book that I hope gets into the hands of as many children as possible.
I bet you have a Santa book for us, too,
I
John.
do, Rocco. I brought Click, Clack, Ho, Ho, Ho.
You do that very well, John.
Thank you, Rocco. I practiced in the cab on my way over. This book is by the team, Doreen Cronin and Betsy Lewin, who brought us Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type, Duck for President, and Doobie Doobie Moo, which are all phenomenal read-alouds. I was actually on the fence about bringing this book, but then I Skyped with my colleague, Robin Hoffman, and during our Skype call, she read me this book. And I said, Robin, you have convinced me with your beautiful read-aloud voice and in the passion that you brought to the story that I must bring this to New York with me to talk about on KidLit TV. So this book is published by Simon & Schuster. And it is, of course, it stars all the characters who we know from all those books who I mentioned. And in this volume, Farmer Brown and his animals are preparing for Christmas. And Farmer Brown is getting everything set, like pigs stocking and sheep stocking and the cows stocking. And when he's doing that, he hears a jingle up on the roof. But it's not actually Santa, it's Duck. He has on some binoculars that look like magnifying glasses. And you think right away, well, what is he going to be doing? Is he going to pretend that he's Santa? Is he going to stand on the roof and wait for Santa Claus? And I like this because I'm attracted to wordless spreads, because I find that with wordless books and wordless spreads as a read aloud, I often have richer conversation. So I appreciated that. So Farmer Brown has to rush up to bed because he doesn't want to be there when Santa arrives. But what we see is that Duck gets stuck in the chimney. And all the animals need to now come and help Duck. So on the page it says, ho, 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 uh-oh, Duck is stuck. And then the sheep go up to unstuck Duck, ho, 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 uh-oh, the sheep are stuck. So it has a nice rhyme. It's a predictable story that I think will be very engaging during story time. So I'm glad that Robin Hoffman read it to me and that I brought it to share with all of you.
Yeah, this year there are a few books that have urban settings, and I know I have one, and Maria, I think you may have one
I have
too.
a wonderful New York Christmas book, Miracle on 133rd Street, by Sonia Manzano, the beloved Sonia Manzano of Sesame Street, of course, who also has a memoir this year that I really would recommend for older, for YA, even middle grade readers, Becoming Maria, it's called.
Now, that's a Scholastic book,
Scholastic.
And this book is...
This one is Athenaeum, Simon & Schuster. This is obviously a picture book for the younger children. It's a fantastic New York City apartment building story. This is a subgenre of urban picture books that I love. Books that are set in apartment buildings where you have a lot of different families whose lives interconnect in various ways. It's not always pretty, it's not always smooth, but by the end it's always really fun and warm. And so this is about a little boy named Jose who lives in an apartment building with his mommy and his papi. They're from Puerto Rico. And the mom is really upset because she's trying to make a roast for Christmas and it doesn't fit in the oven, their tiny apartment oven. In Puerto Rico, they could have gone outside and used a nice big outside oven. Everything here is too small. So little Jose, has the idea of taking the roast down to the pizzeria on the corner and seeing if the pizza guy will let them use the oven. And the dad takes him downstairs and they go down to the pizzeria. And it turns out the regular Ray's Pizzeria, which is a nice little inside New York joke. And it turns out that Ray is really lonely there in the pizzeria on Christmas because no one stays there to eat. And so he welcomes them in, he puts the roast in the oven, and as it's cooking in the pizza oven, this incredible aroma starts filling the pizzeria, and we get a little bit of Christmas magic. The aroma suddenly makes Ray decide that maybe he'll feel a little bit better about Christmas, and he decides he'll come with them to celebrate back at their house. And then all the grouchy neighbors that were complaining as they were taking the roast down one by one kind of smell the smell and join the party. So by the end we have the whole building joining in to celebrate Christmas with this magical roast. And the illustrator, Marjorie Priceman, does a really beautiful, colorful palette. But the thing I like about it is it's not too heavy on the red and green. She brings in lots of more yellows and blues, and it's really a book that I think is city kids will like. Kids who don't live in the city will appreciate the energy and the little bit of magic in it. And Sonia Manzano, in addition to being a wonderful actress, can really write. She writes a beautiful book.
We're going to have to ask her where she got that idea about the pizza oven, because growing up in Brooklyn, at Thanksgiving time, people would actually bring their turkeys to
I've never heard of
to
that.
the pizza.
Well, maybe this
pizzeria.
came from her real life.
Yeah, so it may have come from her real life.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting.
But I've never seen it in a book before.
No,
so
and I haven't even thought about that in decades until you just mentioned that. I have another book that's based in New York. It's Oscar and the Eight Blessings. And guess who the publisher is? You could have the Flatiron Building. It's by Macmillan. I think it's Roaring Brook. It is by Richard and Tanya Simon and illustrated by Mark Siegel. In the author's notes, he mentions that it's based on a family story, and it's based in 1938. And it's very interesting that it actually begins with a visual prologue and Kristallnacht, and Oscar has to leave his country, and his parents send him. On the title page, you see him coming to America, where he has an address, and he arrives in New York, at lower part of New York City, and he has to make his way all the way up Manhattan to his aunt's house. And as he's going up New York, he meets various people who help him. There is this fellow here who is in a newsstand that gives him a comic book, and it just happens to be a Superman comic book, because in 1938, it was the first year that Superman came out. And then he actually goes and meets various people. He's at Carnegie Hall and on West 57th Street, and he meets this fellow who whistles to him, and it happens to be Count Basie. And then he goes a little further uptown, and he meets a woman, and it's none other than Eleanor Roosevelt. He gets uptown just in time to celebrate Hanukkah with his aunt. So anyway, another one that would make a great holiday special.
One more, sticking with the kind of religious theme. I thought,
Yes.
back on the Christmas side of things, a book called Goodnight Manger. It's by Laura Sassy and illustrated by Jane Chapman. And it's actually a companion, I think, to a book that came out last year, Goodnight Ark. And what I kind of was realizing when I was picking these books today that all the books that I've chosen are sort of taking something really traditional and sort of either updating it or tweaking it or having a little bit of fun with it. And this book is no different. It's basically sort of a bedtime story, almost like a lullaby about the manger and Jesus has just been born, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. There's a couple things that I like about it. One is that Jesus and his parents look like they would have actually been born in the Middle East. This is not a whitewashed Christmas story. This looks like people who actually would have lived in Bethlehem, that sort of thing. And the other is that it's sort of a little bit more realistic. It's sort of like, it's noisy when you've got barnyard animals all over the place and visitors descending everywhere. And so basically they're trying to put the baby to sleep, and it's noisy, and he's like throwing a fit. Because what new mother doesn't want foreign dignitaries and shepherds descending immediately after you've just given birth?
Right.
It's everyone's dream.
The infant Jesus there is definitely a Middle Eastern.
Yeah, and it's such a nice detail,
infant,
and it goes throughout the art. It's all written in rhymes. They're so smoothly written, and I don't know, a lot of fun. They have basically, in this one scene, it's, soon hosannas overhead, rouse the little sleepyhead. Angels' voices shout with joy, meet this precious baby boy. Mama says, be quiet, please. Your voices carry on the breeze.
And who's the author and illustrator?
So it's Laura Sassy and Jane Chapman, and it's published by Zondervan. Okay. But I thought they did a really nice job of sort of, both being respectful and reverent in terms of, this part of the Christmas holiday, but at the same time, being able to have a little fun and realize that, in this particular situation, when you've got, itchy hay and, noisy animals, that it, might take a little bit of doing to get baby Jesus down to sleep. So I thought they did a really nice job with it.
Well, thanks for sharing those books. What a great, I guess it's 12 books, right? We did 3 each. And, the holidays is also a great time for giving books out as gifts. And I know for a fact that we each brought up a suggestion for a holiday gift book. So Maria, yours is still in the Christmas vein.
Yeah, this is a book that really caught my eye, called Dear Santa, Children's Christmas Letters and Wish Lists, 1870 to 1920. It's published by Chronicle. I thought this would be a great gift to bring to a family that you're going to visit, because really everyone in the family could enjoy this book, and you can kind of keep it around and dip into it here and there and just find these incredible little treasures from, some of them are American, some of them are British, some of them are Australian, and you just really are reminded how little children had, through most of history, and also that the whole excess of Christmas really wasn't always the case. A lot of these children are asking for some candy and nuts and oranges. That's a big theme. A lot of them are, they're just incredibly heartwarming. Some of them are heartbreaking. Some of them are great. Dear Santa, I want to thank you for nice things that you have always brought me and want to ask you for some more favors. Please bring me a signet ring and a book called Little Women. I hope you will remember the little children, from Juanita in Oklahoma. Dear Santa Claus, I thought I would write to let you know that I have moved, and I hope you won't forget me this year. We have had no tree since the earthquake, and we lived in a shack until a few days ago. I also have a little sister 6 years old and a little brother, and he is 8 years old. She would like the same. I would like a doll's buggy and my stocking full and a Christmas tree. And this is from San Francisco in 1907, right after the earthquake. So there's some history here. There's just the fantastic opportunity to hear children's voices from different parts of the country and the world, and then just, the reminder of how Santa has been this incredible figure in the childhood imagination for so long, and really hasn't changed all that much. And it's beautifully done. Chronicle obviously does beautiful gift books of all kinds.
And I like the ribbon marker.
There's a ribbon. You always like a little
Yes,
velvet
right,
ribbon.
yes.
The very vintage typeface and end papers. Everything about this book is really nice. I think would be a nice gift.
And John, did you bring that heavy book with you all the way from Chicago?
I did not put this in my suitcase, Rocco, or my carry-on, because it is a very heavy book. But as you can see, this is a marvelous and beautiful
being
book.
blinded by that gold.
Actually, I went to Strand Bookshop to buy this, and I was really picky about how the gold looked, because the two copies that were in front of the copy I ended up buying, it was a little bit scratched. And I was not going to buy a scratched one.
Less discriminating readers.
Yeah. And I even went up to a bookseller and I said, "Are these the only copies you have?" So I don't know. I think security was going to come get me.
It's like picking oranges or fruit, right? Yes.
It was, but look at this. It's beautiful. I keep saying it's marvelous, which is getting a little old. So this is The Marvels, written and illustrated by Brian Selznick, published by Scholastic Press. And as we all know, with a Brian Selznick book, we wait a long time, because it takes him 3 to 5 years to make a book, but it's worth the wait. Now this book, I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about the two books that we can kind of look at this as part of a trilogy. So the first book is The Invention of Hugo Cabret, that came out in 2007. And I'll never forget when that book was published, because it was one of those books that just every child in my 3rd grade classroom read, where it was like, come on, you need to read this in one night, because it's my turn to read Hugo next. And that was the first time I had seen a book where everybody in the class wanted to read it. Then the second book is Wonderstruck, and now the final book is The Marvels. Now the stories are not related, but the structure is. So in The Invention of Hugo Cabret, it goes back and forth from illustrations and regular chapters. In Wonderstruck, it tells 2 different stories told 50 years apart. We have Ben's story and we have Rose's story. And then eventually the 2 stories come together. This book is presented very differently. The first 400 pages are illustrated. And when you're reading the first 400 pages, you feel like a speed reader.
Yeah,
you're like,
they go fast.
wow, I'm on page 350 and only an hour has passed. But so this is my first recommendation. Take your time when you're reading the illustrated section, because there's so many details.
A lot of details.
So many. And when you get to the prose section, I recommend going back and rereading the illustrations. You're really reading the illustrations. I had put on Facebook this morning that I'm in Central Park rereading the illustrated section. I was waiting for someone to say, you're not rereading it. You really are. It's such a visual literacy in this book. Now, I feel very protective of this book, because I don't want anyone to spoil anything.
Oh, there's a lot of twists and surprises.
And so I always say I probably give the worst book talk about The Marvels, because I don't want to tell you what it's about, because I want you to go into this book, and you both have, we've all read it, you want you to go into it and not have one little thing spoiled. I'll never forget when I read Wonderstruck, and for the first time you see what Ben looks like. I had to put the book down and take a break, because I was so overwhelmed with emotion. I felt like that with this book too. It takes a lot to make me cry. There are 2 books that have made me sob. The first book is The One and Only Ivan by Catherine Applegate. I had a catharsis reading that book. The second book, The Marvels, I sat in my living room crying for an hour after reading this book. The last thing I want to say about this book is when all 3 books are together on your shelf, they look awesome. I have it on the top shelf. Where I sit at my desk in my office, I see, obviously, bookcases, and I position them in the perfect spot so that Hugo is looking at me, and Rose is looking at me, and now George is looking at me. And I saw Brian Selznick earlier in this week, and I told him that, and I told him I'm waiting for them to start talking to me. And that's either when I seek help or...
So you like the book, John?
Oh, I love the book. I love the book. Now, I know I haven't told you what it's about, but I don't want to. So just trust me. Trust me. This is an amazing, marvelous book. And now I will stop calling it marvelous.
John?
So I have Happy by Pharrell Williams. I think everybody knows this song. It is inescapable. It has been inescapable since about 2014, somewhere in there.
You've done that to us twice now today.
I know, but
musical
I keep
theme.
bringing books that require singing, and I'm not going to sing. But yeah. So this one, is now inescapable in a new format. And so what they did, which was so nice, it's the lyrics of the song, which we can probably all summon pretty quickly. But what they did, they just did some like crazy photo shoot, and they've got all these kids with chalk drawn backdrops and cardboard props and all sorts of costumes, kids from around the globe, and they just did such a nice job with it. It's such a fun thing, and I feel like this is a song that like all families know. I'm sure every kid has been dancing to this, when it comes on the radio, that sort of thing. It's a song that families can enjoy together, and now I feel like it's a book that families can enjoy together too.
Great. I picked a book that, if you don't have children of your own and you really don't know what book to buy, people will always tend to go and pick up a Dr. Seuss book. So many of you probably heard that there is a new Dr. Seuss book. It goes, What Pet Should I Get? Actually, this was like the first children's book to appear on the front page of the book review when it came out.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a book that was found in Dr. Seuss's papers, and it's a book you're not going to find at a flea market because it just came out. You'll find all those other Dr. Seuss books at flea markets, but you won't find this one. And it's on the bestseller list, and people will know who you're talking about when you give them the book. The holidays is a magical time, and I can do a little magic, so watch this. Magic. And one last request from my guests is a toast. So we'll start right there with John.
To books leading us to joy.
To books that bring friends and family together.
To books that you'll remember for years to come.
And books that will open children's minds and hearts to the world.
Cheers.
Cheers. Happy holidays, everyone. And thank you all for being here. Remember, until next time, give a kid a book in any format.